All right, so I'll give kind of a rundown who I am. I'll let Chris introduce himself and then kind of what's going on here, and then we'll get going. So for those of you that I haven't met, I'm Dr. Kim Davis. I own RunLab, and just a little bit about RunLab if you haven't been in before. We are mostly focused on doing gait evaluation and running assessment. Runners, triathletes of all varieties, even a lot of people who aren't runners, we still look at their running mechanics to help us understand where their strengths and weaknesses are. So it's a big process of looking at your gait in shoes, barefoot. We look at a bunch of range of motion data, some strength data, structural data, talk about your injuries, that sort of stuff, and then come up with a plan for you, go through all of your mechanics with you, help you understand what's going right, what's going wrong, what you need to work on. And then if you need, if it's just a performance development issue, we can work through that with some gait retraining and some help. We can work with your coaches if you have a coach. Just a little bit about my background and why I'm here with Chris today. So we've raced together in the past in adventure races, and we'll talk. Yeah, we did win. I even got very, very lost. But we'll talk about that. So we'll talk more too about what adventure racing is, because I know some of you guys are probably not super familiar with the sport in general. But I've been adventure racing and trail running for probably, I don't know, 20 years or so. My first sport was downhill mountain biking in my 20s, and decided when I got into chiropractic school that I kind of needed to push that aside for a while because it was too risky to break a hand, and got into running and trail running and adventure racing, and I really have been doing that for quite a while now. The longest I've done is a 72-hour race, and we'll talk about what adventure racing looks like, but you don't sleep, you just go through and race the whole time, so it's kind of a crazy sport. I also feel like trail running and adventure racing in this whole sport is really good for people who necessarily aren't that great at it. It can be really good for your road running, it can be really good for your triathlon as far as fitness goes, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
So yeah, I'm really honored to get to be here with you guys and be here with Dr. Kimberly Davis, because we actually met a few years ago. I came onto the scene, I actually took over Tejas Trails from the founders, Joe and Joyce Crusadis, myself and my awesome wife, who's absolutely nuts, raising a family and owning a trail running company. But we took over Tejas Trails from Joe and Joyce about three plus years ago, and then we moved to the Austin area so that we could run that full on. And so it's a big honor for me to get to do that. But when we first showed up, I met Kimberly, and we had this awesome time together running and racing, and then we kept saying we got to get together, so this is super cool. We're finally getting together and making this happen, getting a partner together and bring more people just onto the scene. And so I think what I love about this and what I love informing people of trail running and adventure racing is it's more good for you ADD people like me that just like want to try some of this, get bored of that, want to try that, and ultimately now that I'm not competing as much and not training to race elite races, I really just want to stay in shape. I want to have fun staying in shape. And for me, I don't know if everyone's wired this way, but I really like need something on the calendar to kind of like to make myself get up out of bed, you know, in the morning, or stay up later to get the workout in if I didn't do it throughout the day. And so that's what I love, and so I'm really excited to get to own and operate Tejas Trails now. And basically what we do is we put on 17 trail running events. So we have more than a race a month now. I've got to partner with an awesome guy and family, Brad and Nyla Quinn. They started the Captain Carl's Night Series that happens during the summer months. And so we're just about through that. We've got one more race of the Night Series coming up here in a couple weeks. And then I'll be back on the scene directing on site for a while, and then Brad will direct a race and I'll direct a few. And so we've got this awesome partnership with the Quinns, and now we can literally run a trail run every few weeks. So it's super cool. Only downside is that I don't get to race as much, so I'm always helping you guys have fun. So, but I'll take it for now. So that's the lowdown.
So we'll start with trail running, just in general, because trail running is always part of adventure racing. And so we'll start there, and we'll talk about some of the gear, and if you guys have questions, super low key. If you guys have questions, please let us know, because we'd like this to be interactive and not just us talking at you about stuff we love to do. So what do you need? You don't need a lot to trail run. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what the gear you use. I don't do a lot of running at night unless it's part of an adventure race, but obviously if you're going to run at night, having a good headlamp is super important. And then a basic pack that doesn't rub. I mean, that's a big deal. And I don't know, you probably have been through more packs than I have, but it's hard to find the one that fits. And I think making sure you get a pack that really, really fits for hydration and there are varying sizes all across the board depending on how long you plan on being out there. But anyway, yeah, you probably want to.
Well, funny you mentioned that, Kim. We didn't plan this. I was like, what can I bring that would be something that might be helpful? So this is like those Russian dolls. I've got all my various racing packs that I thought might be cool. So this is like, so kind of something that I really love. You can see from the dirt. This is actually washed. That's what it looks like after it's washed. Most of the blood came off of it. So this is kind of cool because you've got some small pockets for some snacks, some gels, and you can get quick access to it without taking your pack off, and then a smaller reservoir spot. That's kind of like for the shorter ones. Same thing here. I really like these kind, and they've got different little things to them. They do different things with the buckles and whatnot, but these are kind of some shorter or some smaller, shorter distance kind of options that I love.
Those, that's what I use, is exactly like that, and you can get a lot of shit in there. So I do 12-hour adventure races with that, because I can stuff some water, some snacks, maybe even a shoe if I have to. So it can fit a lot of stuff. Those are really good, and they fit really close to your body. So when you're running, you don't feel like things are jarring around and chafing and jiggling too much, because that can be super annoying. So yeah, those are really good packs.
And they make women's specific and men's specific. Some of them are universal, but it's like anything. I just go try them on and return a lot. So, and then this is something I've used for up to 24. I think I even did a 36-hour with this, but I had to kind of start strapping a jacket around the outside and stuff like that. But you can really get a lot of stuff in these that have multiple compartments to them. And then these are nice for when the weather's shifting, when like in the fall and spring you're going for a long run or something, or you're out in the race, potentially going into the nighttime or whatever. These are really awesome because you can have some extra clothes in there, not have to strap stuff around you and have stuff around your waist and all that. But that's another one you can look at. And then this is the one that I raced the 10-day race in, and then also a 5-day race out in the Mojave Desert, and a couple others that were longer than 3 days or 4 days. But this is pretty much like the biggest thing I've ever used, and it sucked a lot.
From a mechanic standpoint, because that's what we look at all the time, we're always trying to figure out what's causing people to create compensation patterns in the way that they move and run. And having a pack on creates a lot less change in your mechanics than carrying a water bottle. So when you carry a water bottle, even people that carry a phone, their mechanics change because of it. And so it's an interesting thing when you watch it, because they'll grip their phone and so they'll tuck their arm a little tighter. Well, a lot of times that'll cause a chain effect down the kinetic chain, and sometimes they'll cross over on the other side just because of the rotational component in their upper body. So it's an interesting thing. It doesn't seem like it's any big deal, but it really is. So wearing a pack that's evenly distributed can help your mechanics, and especially if you're out on an ultra run or something really long, that matters, right? Because every step, if you're compensating, you're going to develop some issues, or at least a lot of times you can.
Yeah, and I was going to say the last part goes perfectly with that. So a lot of times you don't need near that much. So if you're going out for a trail race, or just enjoying the trails on a run, well, I'll say it this way. At my events, we usually have, for the shorter distances, you're not going to go more than about 5K without an aid station. And so, and then for a longer race, you're not going to really go more than 5 or 6 miles. Now, if you go out of state to a mountain race or something like that, obviously you're going to get to longer distances between aid stations. But for the Texas scene, the local scene, Louisiana, New Mexico, most of these races you're going to have pretty close stops along the way. So I always actually make myself run with 2 bottles when I'm training. Now when I'm racing, I'll probably go to 1 because I'm thinking speed. But when I'm training, for just what she said, I'll make sure I have 2 because 1, it's just a little bit better workout, fatigues my arms, which is helpful on race day. But the bigger reason is because I actually had a really bad groin injury, and turns out it was because I was running for so many miles with something in my hand. It was causing my spine to shift along the way every stride. And if you log, 20 to 60 miles a week wherever you're at in training, that's a lot of foot strikes and a lot of spine strikes, and everything's connected along the way. And so finally put it together that my lower left leg hurt, my groin on my right side, and my shoulder blades, and it was all because of the stinking, one thing in one hand. So that's super, super important. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you can speak into that for hours and hours.
I didn't put any slides in here on this, but wilderness first aid is kind of an important thing. So if you're in a race situation, there's going to be people around all the time. But if you're in an adventure race situation, you may be way out in the middle of the woods, or if you're out, somewhere just running by yourself and something happens, you need to know what you're supposed to do. So doing some basic training, or at least learning online what you should do. For instance, what do you do if you get bit by a snake?
You lay down and die.
You lay down and die. That's an option. So there's that.
Slow your heart rate.
Yes, that's the deal, right? So the old method, the way long time ago, was, oh God, you got to tourniquet it up. You want to strap it up. If you put a tourniquet around something, the chances of you losing that limb are very, very high. So you don't want to tourniquet things unless you absolutely know you're going to bleed out and die from the wound. That's the only time you want to tourniquet something. So snake bite, you leave it alone, and you get to help as quickly as you can, but not elevating your heart rate. Because if you elevate your heart rate, so let's say you get bit by a snake, if you go hauling ass back to the trailhead, that venom is going to your heart very, very rapidly. So you want to slowly and as calmly as possible, despite snake head hanging from your arm, you want to get yourself back to help and get someone to fix the problem. Yeah, right. So anyway, but these are the kinds of things that it's good to be aware of. Be thinking about this stuff, so if you are out there in the wilderness, you can at least protect yourself from this kind of thing as much as you can. So having a whistle, having a headlight if you're going to be out there at night, and then I think we should talk about trail shoes versus road shoes, because a lot of people have this question: do I need a trail shoe? What's the difference between a trail shoe and a road shoe? I run in road shoes all the time on the green belts, and just trail running in general, because I like the flexibility of a road shoe. So the biggest difference that you typically see in a trail shoe versus a road shoe is that trail shoes often have a rock plate. And a rock plate is meant to actually stop rocks from hitting your foot when you land, so it'll absorb some of that impact when you're running over rocks and roots and things like that. You won't feel it quite so much. But because of that rock plate, it adds a lot of rigidity to the sole of the shoe, and that's going to affect the way that you move and how comfortable the shoe is. And for some people that works great. For me personally, I like more flexibility. I like to be able to feel the trail. So a lot of times I'll run in a road shoe that just has some good grippy stuff on the bottom. I also really like the Nike Kiger is a really good shoe. It's got a lot of flexibility despite the fact that it's got a little rock plate in there. But anyway, that's the main difference that you'll see in trail versus road. There's some other stuff. You'll see trail shoes that have a lot of water protection to try to keep, but the problem is if something's waterproof, it's going to keep the sweat in, right? So it almost doesn't matter that much. Your foot's going to get wet no matter what. It's just, is it coming from the outside or the inside? So finding a shoe that actually breathes pretty well is a little bit better, especially in Texas weather, because it's so humid and you're out there, you can't help but have a wet foot. So you just want you want to wear socks that will help wick that moisture away, and then you want to wear a shoe that actually can breathe a little bit. Do you have a favorite trail shoe, or what do you race in? I don't even know.
Yeah, I have several different kind of like levels of shoes, and so my La Sportivas, I call my tanks, because I can just sort of kick through scree and rock and it doesn't really hurt. And then I race in Solomon speed racers when I want to do shorter stuff, and that allows me to feel a little bit more agile. And then I actually race in, or I run in Asics road trainers, and so I just totally all across the board. But it's because I've tried, again, just loads and loads of different types for different things, and been out there and been like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? This is terrible, and I still got 6 miles to go, or whatever along the way. But then as I literally keep I used to when I trained and raced more, but I would actually keep a journal of different things. I try different foods, I try different gels, I try different shoes, and as soon as I get done, I take a note, and then I would compare it. I'd do it again on a different day, different weather, different time of year, whatever. And then I just sort of figured out what I like and what I don't like for this or that, when it's raining or when it's dry or when it's humid or when it's cold or whatever. I found out that I don't like waterproof shoes. Because then I found out I was always thinking too much. It's like, all right, how deep is that puddle? Is it going to go over the top of my shoe or not? And should I step in it or not? And so I don't know. I kind of like different.
Rotate through. I do too.
Yeah, and when I do longer races, I actually switch, because I feel like it rests different parts of my spine and different things. It makes my joints feel a little bit different when I'm wearing a totally different type of shoe.
Well, I actually recommend trail running for a lot of our runners who don't trail run as part of our gait retraining stuff, because when you go over terrain that has a lot of lateral movement necessity, because let's say, you know, you're running down a trail and there's a big rock, you're either going to hurdle over it or you're going to go around it, right? Well, when you go around it, you get some strength work in that frontal plane, which as runners, most of us don't get if we just run on trails and roads, because we're only ever doing anything in the sagittal plane. So when you're made to move sideways, that starts working on your hip strength in a way that you don't get when you just run on the road. So this kind of thing, trail running, can be really, really good as a functional way for people to strengthen their hips and their ankles and all these kind of hypermobile areas in their body, just because it's functionally requiring you to take big steps over logs and move side to side and do all this stuff you just never do out on the road. There's a lot that could be talked about on any of these, but yeah, I think trail running in general, very, very good sport for people who feel like they have, oh, I constantly sprain my ankles. Well, you probably need to trail run. You got to be careful. You got to take smaller steps and not be super, you know, taking big, long steps where you're going to risk spraining that ankle. But it's going to give you more strength in that ankle to trail run, and that's going to help the fact that you chronically sprain your ankles. So it can be a really good thing for you. You just got to be careful and take smaller steps until you get a little stronger.
Yeah, and one of my favorite stories, Chrissy just told this to some friends the other day. So we had a really great friend of ours come out to do one of our runs. Ironically, it's one coming up in a couple weeks. It's called the Pale Face Trail Run. Changed the name to the Mellow Trail Run, so this year it's the Mellow Pale Face Trail Run. But the Pale Face race was like this was about 2 years ago, I guess. And our buddy came out, and he had done a bunch of road running and done some longer stuff. But he came out to do, Jeff McElhinney, did you do the half marathon? Yeah, he'd done some road marathons, yeah. So he was going to do the half out here at this trail race. And it's, yeah, has anyone been to Pace Bend Park? Been out there? It's really pretty area nearby. That's where we're going to be here in a couple weeks. I love it out there. And so the trails are back and forth. They're kind of hard packed and then loose and then hard packed and then loose. There's some rocks here and there. And so he comes back and he's scraped up and bloody. And this guy's a pastor, right, like of a church. And he comes back and he's like cussing and he's like, this is stupid, I'm so over it, I'm done. And he throws his shoes up in the air. And we're like, Jeff, no, it's okay, like this is the thing, you fall, that's what happens. He's like, no, you're just trying to make me feel better, and I swear I'm not making this up. So then like about 60 seconds later, the winner of the race comes through and does a baseball slide through the finish line and just cuts himself all up, like literally falls to our feet. And he's like, ugh. And I was like, see? It couldn't have been any more perfect. And so, but it's a perfect example. It's just one of those things where, I'm not going to lie, because the other thing I wanted to get into with this slide that I was thinking of earlier is that a lot of people are also they're afraid of doing the trails because they're like, well, I trip and fall over cracks in the concrete. I don't think I should be out there with snakes dangling off my tricep. But in all honesty, again, not to downplay it, Texas, this area does have wilderness, no lie. This shirt I'm wearing, the J&J race, it's more remote. You know, it's a private camp that's surrounded by tons of acreage of private ranches. So you feel like you're out in the middle of nowhere, but I couldn't be in business if I didn't keep runners safe. So I want you to know that I'm not going to say that there's no chance you're going to get injured or there might be animals in your path. But in all honesty, our races are usually a little bit on the bigger side for trail runs, which means there's only like a few hundred, which is kind of one of the cool parts I'll talk about later too. But you're probably not going to be the only one to spook the cute little porcupine, right? Or whatever the animal is. The chance of a wildcat attack, I can't make my fingers go that small. There's a lot of deer, a lot of axis deer out there, a lot of whitetail. They have plenty of food to choose from. They don't need to try to wrestle 400 trail runners. So what I'm getting at is that the injury risk and all these things, are my ankles too weak? Are my joints in too bad a shape? Am I too old to start getting into this? Am I too young? Are the longer distances good or bad for me? In all reality, it's so good for you because maybe you do have to be a little more cautious at the beginning, but it's just like anything. And the learning curve is really fast, which is fun compared to like learning to go mountain biking or learning to go climbing and figure out all the gear and the knots and all that. Your body was made to run through the dirt. And I'm personally saying today that I'm pissed off at all your parents for teaching you to stay out of mud. That was wrong. So the point is that the idea of getting out in the woods, getting out on the trails, trying some adventure racing, trying some trail running, I'm really not trying to sell you on this because it's how I'm making my living and providing for my family and my beautiful, cute little daughters over there. But seriously, it's so good for you. But it will be something where you probably are going to fall. I mean, like that was the answer to Jeff, my buddy. Like, dude, I fall when I'm running in the woods. I get so excited, especially when the weather starts turning, and I take a turn too fast, or I get tired and my form's terrible because Dr. Davis hasn't been working on me enough, and I'm dragging, I'm swinging my hips around, and I'm not lifting my knees anymore. And then all of a sudden, I'm on my face, and I have no idea how I got there, and it hurts, and I bleed, and it sucks. That part sucks, but it's just kind of part of the deal. So I would just encourage you, if you've been like questioning, should I or can I or will I really get it? Like, you're probably going to get jacked up a couple times, but it's worth it. Is that a good honest? So I don't want to over baby this conversation, but that's kind of where So for my races, for Tejas Trails races, our courses are marked like crazy. All right, so you don't have to navigate, you don't have to know your way around the trail beforehand, you don't have to go scout the area before the race, you just show up and you follow the markers. And Brad has all the course marking stuff, but I found this one course marker that I had sitting in my office that snuck out of the gear. So we don't use these small of ones anymore. They're about 3 times the size of this, and this is highly reflective. This is reflective parachute cord. We've actually transitioned now. You'll still see some of this setup, but we transitioned to inch wide, highly reflective straps that go down. So you're talking about we've got about 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches on our highly reflective markers. So if the race starts off early in the morning, goes into the dusk, if you took longer than you expected and you hike a lot, you know that no matter when you're there, the course actually gets easier to find in the dark, ironically. So we have, so I'll put out, just for instance, for some of the races, it depends on how many intersections and how many deer trails there are that deers have made, and how many offshoots and how many road crossings or whatever the case is. So obviously this can swing a lot, but on average I put about 1,000 of these out on a race course. Okay, just to give you a number to guess with. And then from there we use bright yellow arrows. So if there's an intersection, I'm going to drive a stake in the ground in the middle of the turn you don't want to go on. I'm going to block that off with a big arrow that's going to point the way to go. Then I'm going to take bright orange caution tape that has got the Tejas Trails logo over and over every 6 inches on it, and I'm going to run that around trees and around that stake and around the turn. And if you were to happen to hurdle all of that, there's going to be a wrong way sign down that long trail that's red. It has skull and crossbones on it. All right? And the Tejas logo on it. So, does that make sense? So you're going to literally be able to find. So then sometimes we have different distances that split off. So there's going to be like it may say 5K this way, half marathon up, or whatever. And I'll reinforce that another 10 meters down the trail, another 10 meters down the trail. So, so the only thing you really have to do is not follow the lemming in front of you, because that's what happens if someone falls asleep, and they just kind of hurdle the thing and go past the thing, or maybe an animal might have knocked the sign over or something the night before. That happens, or big storms blow stuff. But it's logical, unless you just follow someone blindly, and then all of a sudden there's 6 of you that are like, "You're the worst racetrack in the world. We all got lost." And it's like, well, stop yelling at me and yell at whoever was in the front. And so the trail markings is one side of it with a trail race. That's not true of all trail races. There's different ways that people do it, but we take that over the top because I just get tired looking for people out in the woods. So it's easier for me to do the extra work up front. And then the other thing is the aid stations. That's unique to trail running, which is really my favorite part of it. So I'm scrawny, right, but I love to eat. And so the aid stations at the races are huge. We actually put on little mini kitchens out in the woods. So in the colder months, we'll have burners making hot food. We'll have everything from sweet stuff to salty stuff. We have our sponsors, or Tailwind is the supplements we use that are just incredibly great product. If you haven't used them, find them. We use V-Fuel for our gels. And then we'll have, of course, like the normal spread like you'd see at a road race where there's got lots of fruits and stuff like that. But there's going to be actual food in little dishes that you can eat more of. But we'll cook like maybe quesadillas. There'll be hot broth, hot soups. It's lunchtime. We had a late breakfast. And so just kind of lots of different things, so that as your stomach may not like one thing, then you can try something else or kind of get through it. Obviously for the shorter races, you're not going to want to eat all that, but we'll have the fast stuff that you can eat and keep going with. And then we'll have Cokes and sodas, and then sometimes beers and stuff like that. So, because we can.
So these are all his races for the next upcoming year, basically, right?
Yeah, they're all on there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for tossing that on the slide.
Yeah, no problem.
So, okay, so here's where we're at. We rotate the next coming race up here. So this is the front page of the TejasTrails.com website, so you can see this real easily later. But just to give you an idea, so this is the last of the night series. They're called the Captain Carls, which is they're a really cool tribute to Brad and Nyla's late father-in-law. They called him Captain Carl. They started one race in honor of him, and a super cool story. But the short version is then people liked it and begged for more, so they gave him more. Now it's 4 races that happen through the summer months. But so we're at the last one of those. So this is at Repley Peak Ranch, which is a really cool spot. If y'all haven't been out there, it's literally one of the prettiest places in Texas. It's a privately owned ranch, and he lets people come out on the weekends, but he hosts a few different races through the year. So we're really honored. We get to have 2 races out there. So the night race, I'll mention this too. If you do so there's 10K, 30K, and 60K. The 10K option at the Captain Carl's Night Series, usually, unless you were to hike pretty much the whole thing, you'll probably finish before dark, but you get to go through the sunset, and it's really awesome, kind of test the waters kind of thing. So if you're kind of like, the night stuff sounds cool, but I don't know totally, I'd suggest trying the 10K, and then that way you can kind of get a feel for it, get used to your eyes going through that, get used to starting a race later when you normally be eating supper or finishing up supper. You kind of got to figure that part out. It's kind of fun just jacking with your body a little bit with those things, make yourself figured out. But that's that. And then this is the one that I mentioned that's coming up real soon, that my buddy biffed at and got tired of the rocks. So this one's going to be at a really cool park that's close to Austin, also close to here. And then this is probably my favorite, I have to say. It's not just because I used to live out there and work out there, but it's just Camp Eagle is where this one's at. And she's raced out there a lot for adventure racing. It's just unique. It's a bigger effort for sure, but it's just very unique. The Nueces River headwaters is out there, so no matter what the drought is, there's 1 million gallons or more pumping through every 24 hours, 65 degrees, 68 degrees, somewhere in there. There's bridges going across the river, hard climbs, for sure, it's a tough course, but like I said, trail running, actually I didn't say this, I meant to say this. Trail running, just so you know, also means trail hiking. That's very important. Even the elite of the elites. I mean, the longer races especially, but even the half marathons and stuff, sometimes it's just smarter, no matter how fit you are, to hike, uphills or downs even sometimes. Past an aid station, sometimes I'll force myself to hike for 60 seconds or something. So just know that if you're kind of like, that sounds cool, but I don't want to get in the way or I don't want to feel odd, hiking is part of the deal here too. So
speaking of hiking, do you take trekking poles?
Yeah, she asked if trekking poles are normal. So absolutely, yeah, all of my races, trekking poles are allowed. I just ask that people don't use them the first half mile or so, because there's people passing and whatnot. But beyond the first quarter, half mile, I encourage trekking poles for sure, any distance. But anyway, so that's a big point. I almost forgot that one. So, but hiking, jogging, hammering, we have the national championships for 100K. So we see guys literally, I mean, it's unreal. People running sub 7 hours for 100 kilometers. Do the math later, it's nuts. On some of the hardest terrain in Texas. All the way to people that will show up and they don't plan on running a single mile. They'll hike the whole thing. So the whole spectrum is totally welcome and totally awesome. And in all honesty, that's one of my favorite things, is seeing the fast guys and gals hammering it out the front. And the other thing that's equally fun for me is getting to be there for the back of the packers that are, fighting the cutoffs and like hanging on for dear life. And I get chills just talking about it. Love it. So anyway, so then when we get past the J&J, this race is probably not a good beginner's one. This one is unstaffed aid stations. So we just put ice and water out, and it's kind of meant to be one of the toughest races around. Kind of like, if you can handle it, come get it. She likes Cactus Road, I guess. So I'll stop there. But so you can see we've got a lot of distance choices. So most of the races will have from like a 10K up to a 50-mile distances between. That's on purpose. And so we usually cap each distance off at about 100 to 250, 300 people. So it's really great. So you can kind of go, someone can say, yeah, I'd like to run a half marathon, I'd like to run a marathon. Then you can go together and still drive together and whatever. The start times will probably be different, but you can sort of pick and choose different distances at each event. And so otherwise, they just all have their own personality and style. So I don't want to get too long-winded on that part, but you can get on the website. I try to do as many photos and some videos as much as possible, for each event. And so you can kind of get a feel for it. Obviously, you can get on our Facebook page and talk to people, and they love talking about these things. So you can get really good advice from other people that have done the events, and it won't be short on how many responses you get.
So adventure racing usually involves these disciplines. So some kind of biking, some kind of paddling, some kind of trekking/running, potentially orienteering, and orienteering meaning using map and compass to find your way, and then oftentimes some kind of special tests. But what the distance that you do those disciplines and kind of where they fall in the context of the race, you have no idea until you show up. So you basically will be told, here's your gear list, you'll get access to it on the website, you'll bring your gear, and hopefully maybe a teammate or partner, we'll talk about that in a second. But then you'll show up and they'll say, okay, everybody's gonna meet at a certain time and we're gonna hand out your instruction sheet. And when you get your instruction sheet, that's when you know what the race is gonna look like. Now you'll know how long you're gonna race. For instance, you're not gonna think you're showing up for a 4-hour race and be there for 36 hours. Like, they don't do that to you. But you know that, okay, this race is a 6-hour race. So I can anticipate being out there for about 6 hours, but I don't know which of these things is gonna happen during those 6 hours and to what extent. It's a very cool thing. When we talk about special tests, it can be anything. So they've had us do all kinds of ridiculous things. And the one that I can remember that was potentially my worst that I've ever had to do was I had my partner, so I was blindfolded and my partner had to tell me how to put a puzzle together. And you can't leave transition until you've done this test and then click your little punch card thing. So anyway, that's one that they've had. They do all kinds of little like rappelling and just all kinds of random things. So they'll throw in whatever ridiculous stuff they can think of. Ultimately, like Chris said, with adventure racing, the one thing that's true of all adventure races, no matter whether they're sprint distance or long or 10 days or whatever, the route choice is entirely up to you. So you will get that map and you will get the passport at the beginning of the day, and then you decide how you want to go. If you think that taking the paved road around the mountain is going to be your best bet because none of your people are, good mountain bikers, go that way. If you're going to, summit the mountain and come down the other side through the woods, which is how we typically like to do things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I've seen a lot of very out of shape teams, and I remember us thinking, we're just killing it, right? Like, we're taking this bushwhacking crazy route through the woods, and then we pop out and this team of this overweight family with their little kid with their helmet strapped to their pack even though they're on a trekking leg, or just doing along. I mean, we're in the same place on the course, because we thought hiking over this mountain, we're so badass. Yeah, so it really just navigation is the great equalizer, and that's what I love about this sport, because if you choose a better route, you can be way less, good fitness level than a really fit team, and you can still beat them. And so I think that's what's really, really fun about this sport just in general.
Dr. Nikki, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do they find you when, and I say when, you get lost?
Everybody gets lost. I've gotten lost in it just, sometimes you're 4 hours lost and sometimes you're 20 minutes lost. You're always going to get lost. But you're in typically some kind of controlled area. You're in a park. They're not going to just close up and be like, well, we lost another one. That doesn't happen. There's always next year. They don't do that. So they will absolutely come find you. There's also, just like a triathlon, there's transition areas. And so you're always coming back to the transition area between these legs so they know which teams have come in. If there's a team out on the course for a long time, they can go look for them because they know where the checkpoints are. So they know generally the area you should be in, right? So yeah, it happens to every team, but it doesn't happen in a way that you would think. It's not bad. But a basic map for a team for a beginning race, and a beginner race would probably be a 4 to 6 hour race. And again, it's spread out over several disciplines, but it's this is what a map would look like. So they would basically give you a park map, so you're not having to use a topographic map and understand how to use a UTM coordinate and all these things. You just have to say, okay, you know, this T would be a trekking point, so you have to get that one on foot. Then P is a paddle leg, so you have to get that one by boat. There'll be a B4 is a biking leg. You have to get that by bike. So that's basically what a map would look like. And then again, you choose what route you want to go, which checkpoints you think you should get first. They usually don't make the courses. They're not anticipating most teams will clear the course. So you kind of have to be strategic about which ones you want to kind of leave behind and say we're not going to go get that one. In an adventure race, you have no idea if the people that are at that checkpoint with you punching it, maybe they've already gotten 3 checkpoints, maybe they took a different route, maybe this is their first checkpoint, it's your 4th. Who knows? You just don't know. One thing I find cool about adventure racing too is that the people are so friendly. I mean, other teams will help each other. I mean, nobody's just like, oh, I'm not going to tell you. You know, I've had a couple people screw us over. You know, I got checkpoints over there. 2 hours later, we're like, what the hell is this thing? But anyway, that is very, very rare. Most people are super, super cool in the sport. And
Most.
Yeah, most. Most.
What's the average price for one of those races?
Prices?
Average price?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let me see. Less than triathlon.
I mean, yeah, it's very reasonable.
I want to say like his sprint races are probably what, $60?
I'll find out.
For the team. A lot of times it's team.
The power of the internet.
Yeah.
You and your 3 teammates.
Yes, you do a whole thing together. In fact, there's rules about you can't be further than 30 seconds away from your teammate. Because you wouldn't want to leave all the people down there and then send this guy up to the top to get the, you know, at the top of the mountain to get the checkpoint and then come back down and everybody goes again. Right. Right. So
There's no training for these, right?
well, actually, so the best way to train for them, trail running, is really the best way you can get out and just get your body used to being out in the woods and be comfortable. And again, learning a little bit about wilderness first aid, because these ones, you know, you're way out in the middle of nowhere. And so if something happens, you usually have a teammate with you, but you still need to know what to do. But training-wise, one of the things, I think I have a slide in here about it later, but joining an orienteering event, they have the Austin Orienteering Club puts on races all over the place, and they put on, it's just on foot, the ones they put on don't involve biking or paddling, but it teaches you how to use a map and compass. They even have a little clinic, so you learn how to use it for the first time. They have compasses for rent, and then they do their stuff out of like St. Ed's Park, or the Greenbelt, or Bastrop. I mean, it's all just really like park-based, super local stuff. So you can just learn how to use a map and compass. They're really, really fun. Yeah, super fun.
They're a bunch of cool guys and gals, and they also love teaching people, and they're really great coaches. They don't get paid for it. I don't think they do, but some of them might. But they're just very cool, very warm and welcoming. So the question, if y'all didn't hear, was how much does an adventure race cost? So Art and Robbins, the two cool adventure racing, it's about $75 for the sprint and $90 for the longer course. So
Yeah, I mean,
you get a lot with that.
Yeah, I mean, 12-hour, you know, it takes you 12 hours to finish a triathlon at $600, you know, an Ironman. So, you know, it's like 125
per person.
Yeah. We mentioned this before, but having a team is awesome. That was our team that we were talking about. We raced in New Mexico.
That's the one time I got lost.
Oh my God! And we were like 3 hours lost. So we went down. We took this picture because we thought we were killing it, you know. And then we went down this side of the mountain, which, by the way, we were supposed to go that way, and ended up spending about an hour just going straight down the side of a mountain until we realized we'd gone all the way off the map. We had no idea where we were. We're sitting there all kind of crowded around the map, like, where exactly do we think we are? Had to go all the way back up the thing and back down the other side. We still ended up winning, but that's just, we had to work hard. It was a rough day. So lastly, just as far as what kind of gear, we basically talked about, the main thing is just having some kind of a bike, right? So a mountain bike is first best almost in any race. Sometimes a cyclocross bike will be okay, and then sometimes a hybrid will be okay too. You just need to look at the race details and talk with the race director if you have questions. Always having a compass, even if you don't know how to use it, is a good idea. Sometimes you get yourself out of some things just because you're like, I think I know what I'm supposed to do with this thing. Some trail running shoes are good. You tend to get a lot of mud.
Shorts.
Yep. Yep. And then a pack. You'll always want to have probably, like I say, I've done a lot of long races with a little teeny tiny pack, but I don't drink a ton of water and I don't take a lot of stuff with me. So probably the mid-size pack, that black one that he showed, is awesome for almost anything you're going to do up to like 24 hours. That one's great because you can fit, you kind of want to be able to fit a pair of, if you had to, if there was a biking leg that would have trekking later and you were wearing different shoes for the two legs, you'd want to be able to put your trekking shoes in the pack. So having a pack that allows for that is kind of great. Yeah, you put a, yeah, so there'd be, this thing would have, this pocket on this side would have the bladder in it, so it would save this pack for the shoes or the food or whatever. Because you carry all your own stuff. There aren't aid stations like there are in trail races, right? So you're not going to come up on a bunch of goos and hot dogs. It's going to be carry your own stuff until you get back to transition, and then you can kind of resupply with whatever you need.
So you can see that, if you want to hold that one, you can see the two sizes. These are just the kind of typical two choices of what they call water bladders, if you're not familiar with that. But that's kind of the one would be about twice the size. So
yeah,
that's basically that.
And clothing-wise, I almost always just race in a pair of tri shorts because they have a thin chamois for getting on the bike, but it's not such a thick chamois like bike shorts that when you get off and run, it's nice to not have to change your clothes and things because they're gonna get gross. You want to wear stuff that can tolerate blood, pee, sweat, thorns, whatever kind of is going to come at it that day, and be fine. So I think tri shorts work really well for that because it's just enough chamois where it gets you through a day without it being uncomfortable to be on the bike for that long. But yeah, a pack, some shoes, a bike, and a compass, and some bike shorts, and you're pretty good to go for most of these races. A helmet.
Yeah. I know it's a lot of times people. Well, I can say for myself. When I first got excited about adventure racing, when I heard of it, again, my ADD side of my personality was just like, man, that sounds so cool, but I didn't have a lot of expendable income then. I didn't really, want to go buy a bunch of gear. I couldn't really do that at that point, and so I was kind of put out by it. But then when I found out that they provide the boats and the PFD, the life jackets, the paddles, any mountain, they're not making fun of me if I broke off mountain bike, so as long as your wheels stay on it, you can get through the woods, and then some of my best friends now are guys that help me deal with mechanicals out in the wilderness, but anyway, my point is that it's really not as intimidating as I thought, as you might be thinking. And so as far as gear stuff, so it really is that simple. That list was pretty much it. And honestly, I've shown up to it's embarrassing to say, but I showed up to a 24-hour adventure race and left my racing pack at home. And so I raced with a duffel bag and the shoes that I had on my feet. I wore a sling bag and did just fine. I had a sore shoulder, but it's kind of one of those things where you don't have to have all this high-tech stuff to make it happen, especially for the the 6-hour and less distances. You can go out there with pretty much the stuff that you probably have and get through it and see if you like it. But anyway.
Yeah, it's super fun. Cool. Anything else? Thank you guys for being here.